Hi, everybody. So nice to be back with all of you. I have such a treat today. You're not going to have me just yammering on for the next 20, 30 minutes. I actually have a guest, and I'm very excited about this guest. I don't know her very well, so I'm going to be getting to know her with all of you. It's Olivia Verhulst. I said that right?
Yes, you
Yes. Olivia is a psychotherapist, and we met at a conference, the incomparable Adrian Garland's conference, I guess a couple months ago now.
Yeah.
And yeah, was it?
Yeah, time
Yeah.
has flown, yeah.
And Olivia had a bit, and she was presenting, and I just absolutely loved everything she was saying. I felt like she was speaking right to my heart.
Mm.
And I did something that I don't do that often, actually. I'm quite kind of reserved at conferences, but I went up to you and I talked to you and I asked you if we could speak more. And I really wanted to just flesh out more of what I heard you talking about, because I really felt like it was right on par with what I talk about in the podcast. But anyway, we'll get to all of that. Olivia, you want to introduce yourself a little bit? Tell people about kind of who you are, where you're from, all that stuff.
Yes, well, first of all, I'm very grateful to be here. So far, our conversations have moved and inspired me, Dr. Bonnie. I know I'm calling you Bonnie, but I like to say Dr. Bonnie. It rolls off the tongue. But yeah, I'm Olivia. I'm located in New York. I'm also certified to do teletherapy in Jersey and in Florida. And I'm working for a group practice called Let's Talk Psychological Wellness, which I absolutely adore. A lot of different insightful and diverse voices on staff. And yeah, I'm also a Forbes health advisor and an adjunct professor at NYU. So I have my hand in a couple different hats. I really love this work. I love this field. And so I was excited to meet you, Bonnie, because at that conference, I feel like we really did align. And there was something that kind of called out to you. You were saying, where do you think that like we align the most in your opinion that like really excited you?
Well, I'll tell you what happened, to kind of sit me up in my chair
Mm.
and then to motivate me to get out of my chair and talk with you, was you were speaking about self-care. And I've actually believe I've done an episode on it. I've definitely done blog posts about it. I yammer on about that a lot.
Yeah.
But I do believe I did that. That self-care is not, what I think that there's so many terms, psychological terms that have been co-opted into the world where they start to lose their meaning. And I've been very disappointed at times to hear people talk about self-care in being this thing that is about, bubble baths and spa trips. And I'm not opposed to either one of those things at all, but that self-care is a really much deeper rooted sense of what it is to care for ourselves. And you spoke about that, and I don't know if you remember speaking about that.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you remember of what you said about that?
So I'm glad that that called out to you because at conferences like this, like we're delivering material to such a broad range of people and crowd that to have a therapist approach me and say like, yeah, this resonated with me. It was a really cool thing. And I'm glad that you agree because it's something I'm hearing about all the time, right? These terms kind of getting diluted, watered down a bit. And I had noticed in my clinical work mostly that the topic of self-care it was a lot of quick fixes, right? like I'm burnt out, but I'll go get a massage this weekend and I'll take off Monday and then I'll be better. And those things are amazing. However, I think self-care is really about the purpose that the things are serving, right? And
Hmm.
the template that we have where we are making decisions that align with nourishment, empowerment, self-preservation, boundaries. So it's about the purpose and the context underneath, not necessarily the thing itself. So if we're relying upon the thing itself to be a cure all, a lot of people are finding themselves disappointed and the self-care being quite short-lived. And so that's why I was inspired to sit in that room of entrepreneurial women and high-stressed women was some of the feedback I was getting, and really just kind of unpack self-care from a different lens. I know many therapists in our communities agree with this sentiment as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. And thinking about the intention of it. I think, obviously I'm a psychologist, you're a therapist, we love this stuff. But in trying to talk to people who don't talk about therapy all the time like we do,
Mhm, mhm,
thinking about the way that you think about yourself, the way that you talk to yourself, the way that you give yourself permission to do the things you do or not give yourself permission.
mhm,
That's where the self-care lives. And so, like you said, a spa is a wonderful thing. But if you sort of like, okay, I'm going to go to the spa and I'm going to relax,
mhm,
and I'm going to feel better. And it's short lived and there's no like sort of overall or overarching look at what it is that's
mhm.
causing the stress or causing whatever's happening. It's more like, I'll just go relax for half an hour or half a day and I'm just tired. That's what that is.
Yeah.
And oftentimes there's hidden messages and meaning in there that's leading us to that stress. Like
Mhm.
I've spoken with a lot of people, a lot of women, actually, executive women who have what they would label perfectionism, which is exhausting
Yeah.
because no one's perfect.
Yeah.
And this desire to constantly trying to be perfect coming from a sense of inadequacy or, a more deeply rooted sense of insecurity.
Mhm.
There, you could have all the spa trips in the world and not fix that. You're not really looking at the root that is pushing you to the limit, like making you work till midnight every night or all the weekends, or never being able to say no when your boss is, giving you that next assignment, because pushing that, what's the hand in the small of your back is
Mhm.
that you're not good enough. So you got to keep pushing. You got to keep pushing.
Yeah.
That's the self-care that I'm talking about. And I know that you're talking about, right? Is
Yeah.
caring for yourself and the way in which you speak to yourself and what you believe about yourself, right?
Yeah, that was really beautifully said.
Oh,
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Yeah. Absolutely agree with everything you're saying. Like, an example that came up for me is I am one of those people that goes every few weeks and gets that massage, and it absolutely does help me take care of my body. But that's the thing it's serving is it helps me to check in with my body. And part of why I get those massages routinely is to not forget about myself, to manage
Mm,
I carry in my body. And I do have like a bad back. That's something I have. And I realize that part of why that is because I hold a lot of stress up here. So then therapy is also helping me take care of my body, right? Because I'm managing and understanding how stress shows up in my life. So again, it's about that full process. It's not about the thing itself. Every once in a while, that's going to be a fix all. I'm wondering, does that kind of speak to what you were sharing?
yeah, yeah. And it makes me think about boundaries, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
it makes me think about how we take care of ourselves. Um, and boundaries, another word co-opted, right? God, there's so many. I should write a dictionary, the
yeah,
co-opted words and how they've lost their true psychological meaning.
yeah.
But talk to me about what you think about boundaries and how you think boundaries could play a role
Mhm.
in self-care.
Oh gosh, there's so many different angles we can approach this topic on. And because we are on the Therapy Deconstructed podcast, right? Let's deconstruct boundaries a little bit.
Oh, good segue. I love that. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah, I mean, it's part of why I'm here is I love myth busting and unpacking some of these terms that, in your words, have gotten co-opted. And the thing that always comes up for me first on the topic of boundaries is I find that in my work with the brave individuals that come to therapy and decide to do healing in whatever form that takes on, that boundaries can kind of be a scary term, Or if you say boundaries to like family members or something like that, it can kind of like raise the hair on your arms a little bit and gives you
Mm,
this real reaction of like, oh, harsh boundaries. It comes with all these meanings and associations.
yeah.
And I think that the ironic part of it all, and I'm interested to hear your opinion, is that boundaries are like the beautiful, sacred thing that, yes, can be uncomfortable to set, but they're the thing that actually keep us close to others. They're not me pushing you away and me keeping you at arm's length. Like, that's kind of the associations we have with boundaries, particularly for
Yeah.
those who haven't really embarked on a boundary journey yet. Meanwhile, boundaries are the thing that are literally going to help you in your relationship define your limits, which ideally the people in your relationships will benefit from too. And then that
Mm,
creates the safe space that you can show up more genuinely and authentically rather than walking on eggshells or resentment building behind the scene or people pleasing and overextending and burning yourself out. That can water down some of our relationships. So boundaries
yeah.
are the things that are totally keeping us close to people. So that's kind of where what initially comes up when I'm thinking about boundaries.
Yeah, I love that. I love everything you just said. And then it just makes me think, then, we're exhausted, we're tired, our back hurts, our head hurts,
Mhm.
everything hurts. And we go get that massage or we go to the spa or we get a bubble bath. It's wonderful. But none of those issues have been addressed. Nothing about what you just said has been thought about or seriously dealt with.
Yeah.
So inevitably, the self care is falling short because we're not doing anything about what's causing the
Yeah.
stress or causing the feeling. Resentment, that's a one that you said, and that just really resonated with me.
Mm.
And I think about for me, and when I don't set the appropriate boundaries in a relationship, how there's some sort of, weird way that twirls around in your head and you somehow you can resent the other or the situation or you can resent anything, I guess. You can resent a city, you can
Yeah.
resent a job, you can resent anything that says,
Mm.
that makes you feel as if you're somehow saying yes when you mean no,
Yeah.
or doing things when you really don't want to, or doing things for the wrong intention, to
Yeah.
people please or to whatever. Yeah,
And
that's how I hear it.
what's interesting, and I think I wrote an article on this once, is that as it relates to resentment, it's kind of valuable information about something unfolding in the relationship. And I think the first thing that we might like think about when we're feeling resentful of someone is what they've done to us, right? Like I'm pissed off at this person or I'm feeling resentful toward this person and it's all about that person. Meanwhile,
Mm,
resentment actually kind of informs us a lot about what's going on inside of us and it can kind of shed light on our role in a situation. What are we, like you said, saying yes to that we really need to be saying no to? What are we
mm.
avoiding that is contributing to our feelings of resentment? Like we
Oh
play a
yeah.
role in resentment. And so I'm glad that you stopped there and unpacked resentment a little bit because the thing about resentment is say we are avoiding something, right? Um at the end of the day, we're avoiding this uncomfortable topic to avoid discomfort in the moment. Resentment's growing then in the long run, and it's just eroding the foundation of the relationship behind the scenes in many ways. And so you kind of got to choose one discomfort over the other when it comes to those hard conversations.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm. Yeah. And one is actually healing and the other one is not. So if
correct.
you want to, yeah, if you want to make a decision,
Yeah,
go for the healing.
yep.
Can we back up just a little bit? Because I think I want people to hear about this idea about boundaries not pushing you away,
Mhm.
that it isn't about pushing people away. Because I
Yeah,
really do think a lot of people feel that it's like a boundary is about saying no, and that's just pushing somebody away because you don't feel like doing whatever it is they're asking of you.
yeah,
And you very clearly said, it's not about pushing someone away, and actually inevitably can be about feeling closer. So
yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, a few things are coming up for me there. One is, our boundaries are about us. right? I think again, the association me, our boundaries are about other people, but our boundaries are for us and about us, right? I'm giving you a gift by sharing my limits with you, by sharing my needs with you. And that is only going to ideally help the relationship that we're in. I will say,
Mm,
sometimes as it relates to boundaries, as it relates to communication and our needs, that approach and delivery can matter more than the content sometimes. So
mm,
I'm interested to hear what you think, Dr. Bonnie, on on boundary setting as it relates to, like, I always hear that sentence that no is a full sentence. I
mm,
actually don't believe that it has to be. Like, I do believe in some certain scenarios that sharing context about our boundaries, sure, we don't owe it to everybody by no means, but sometimes in relationships, sharing the context of where we might be coming from, I think can actually be helpful. I guess
mm.
that just sheds light on there's no universal, like, no is a full sentence. It's just another example for me of there's no universal anything that fits everybody's scenario, you know?
Yeah,
What do you think
yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I think that's you've touched on something that I think because we've all heard that no is a sentence in and of itself. So I can just say no. And if you don't like it, well, Olivia, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You'll have to deal with what that's bringing up for you, you know? Um,
sometimes.
and so sure, yeah, of course, I'm not responsible for
Mhm.
how you feel or exactly what that does to you. But I do think you were talking just a little bit before that about boundaries bringing bringing you closer, and that it's
Mhm.
actually a gift that I'm giving to you.
Yeah.
And that's what I was just thinking about. Depending on the relationship and depending on the no,
Mhm.
um, do I trust and do I feel that I would like to give you more? I would like you to understand my boundary and why it's my boundary and give you a bit more information that sort of opens up, a little bit inside of me. I'm being vulnerable there by giving you a bit of information. So I think that you need to protect that, as Brene Brown, my hero, has said many times, not everybody deserves your story.
Mhm.
That's for sure.
Mhm.
And understanding that as you challenge yourself to be vulnerable in relationships, there are relationships that it's not safe and they don't deserve it, and it's best for you not to open up to someone who isn't in a space where they can give you grace for
Yeah.
showing up in a vulnerable ways. But
Mhm.
if that relationship matters in a way and you feel confident and that you can trust,
Yeah.
I think that vulnerability of saying, I need to say no here, and I would like you to understand why. And
Yes.
wow, like as you just said, what a gift,
Yeah. And that
Yeah,
builds intimacy because intimacy involves being truly seen and known by another, right? And so I could just tell my husband no. But it may not really allow him to get to know me, and where I'm
right.
coming from whenever the topic of conversation is. And so I really liked what you said about sometimes it's not going to be safe to further explain ourselves. It may not be necessary in certain scenarios. I hope individuals can feel empowered just to not always offer that explanation. It's not needed. And other times, it could really help foster connection,
Mm,
vulnerability, intimacy. So
yeah.
kind of again, we're getting at that broader topic that your podcast in many ways is it speaks to, which is there is not like one universal thing that fits all, right? There's not one answer for everything. And so we got to deconstruct these things and add the nuance into these pictures.
Mm, yeah. Love that word. I
Nu-
love that. Yeah. And thank you for segueing to my podcast. I think you should be running my podcast. That's excellent. Excellent segue. Working the name of it right back in there. But yeah, isn't that interesting that I could think I could because being vulnerable is scary. Vulnerability feels vulnerable. Vulnerability, if depending on what's happened to us in our lifetime,
Mm,
feeling vulnerable can feel terrible. It can feel like this is dangerous for me. I don't want to feel this way.
mm,
So kind of deconstructing this and getting to a place where you can start to trust yourself to put a boundary up where you need one.
Yeah.
Not only in relationships that you are definitely closing a door on or pushing away because you need to, but in the ones where you want to keep them close. I think that's something that isn't a common understanding of that word. And so I really appreciate that you helped me flesh that out, because therapy can be very helpful in pulling that apart and to really start to understand the traps you may be in relationships where you always feel resentful, or you always feel used, or you never feel like people really know you, and start to understand, how do you show up, how do you behave, and what do you do with what they're asking you for, because if you're constantly giving everything
Yeah.
and don't feel like you're getting anything in return, that's not any kind of relationship that I want to be in. That isn't a fulfilling relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like when you talk about, so yeah, those relationships where, I mean, I'm often hearing about this from people. I'm frustrated because in this relationship, I'm constantly being asked to do X, Y, and Z. And we're kind of sitting with that part of the situation that feels really angering and unfair. But sometimes the part that does get neglected is the act of saying yes over and over again, not communicating how we feel to this person, and not communicating our needs. So we're back to this place that, as it relates to boundaries, people are not mind readers. So, in a way, it is a gift
Mm,
when we communicate them, we say them, we name our limits for people. Inevitably,
mm,
every single one of our limits in relationships across all different domains are going to be different. So there's a need for that communication on our boundaries.
yeah. And a need for us to understand how that feels, right? We may, depending on what's happened to us, we may have experienced very unhealthy attachments or boundaries in our childhood or into relationships. We may not have been taught, right,
Yeah.
how to experience that and how to listen, because we're telling ourselves, we just aren't always listening.
Yeah.
Um, what is it exactly I need here? Don't you think?
Absolutely. And I'm thinking about how difficulty with setting boundaries comes from many different places. In your work as a therapist, what are like some of the places that you see as reasons why people struggle with boundary setting the most?
I think I think most common, um, and it can come from, a plethora of experiences, but it's something has happened. Something's happened to them
Mm.
in a way that has made them decide that they are not worthy, or their value is associated with what they give,
Yeah,
that they themselves at their core are not enough, so they have to give, they have to exhaust themselves, they have to be everything to everyone. um,
yeah,
where that comes from, I think, is a variety of ways, but I think it's definitely messaging from experiences in our lives that have made us feel as if our worth is something that comes from what we do and how we do it, and not just
yeah,
innately feeling worthy
mm,
of a healthy relationship, or a relationship that gives to us just as much as we give to it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like that
yeah,
sense of what we've decided, our self talk,
mm,
what we've decided about ourselves, and therefore then our behavior comes
yeah,
from that sense of not being enough, just
yeah,
feeling like I've got to I've got to do extra for you so you'll like me, or that you'll um yeah, and that's not a boundary. That's me opening up and doing whatever Olivia wants me to do.
yeah. Oh, that's so well said. I wouldn't even add anything to that because you did cover that phenomenon can come from so many different places. And messaging can be explicit, but it can also be implicit, right? Whether it's a cultural background, whether it's a familial
Mm,
dynamic, whether it is
mm,
trauma that has occurred in our life that can impact our ability to advocate for ourselves and
yeah.
express things directly. And so, it looks, healthy boundary setting inevitably is going to look different for everybody because of the different contexts that we exist in, the different cultures that we exist in. But the hope there is, right, that we're aligned with, we're identifying our needs, and we're able to somehow communicate that to others in relationships. And so
Yeah.
it's definitely
Yeah.
easy.
I work a lot with women who are, you know, 50s, 60s, 70s, who are kind of in that, what ordinarily maybe in the past we would have called retirement. Now we don't, people don't retire. It's, and not necessarily in a bad way. That's just a next chapter, or what they're going to do after their maybe formal working time has ended,
Mhm,
or the children have raised and gone from the home, and the next chapter in a relationship or whatever.
mhm,
And I work with a lot with women who therefore have spent a long time in their life defining themselves by what they've given, by being a mother, a wife, maybe working a job also. But we all know how hard
mhm,
all of that is. And this is not exclusively for women, but in talking about where I typically see it showing up in the women that I work with,
mhm,
it's that sort of slap in the face they get when they look around and the children have, they've raised these beautiful children who are off living their lives. And maybe that very thing that helped them find a self-esteem by giving
mhm,
is now not being asked for as much.
mhm.
It's not
Yeah,
needed.
that identity.
And
Yeah.
and it's the identity. Yeah. So what do you think about that? Like
Oh.
where's that kind of associated with everything we've been talking about?
I think you nailed it. I mean, I thought you were going to talk about self-care there and how it looks different across different chapters of life. But there's a direct correlation to that and boundaries. And so that idea of how we're showing up in relationships is kind of the connector that's coming up for me. It sounds like you're hitting on an identity of being the giver in relationships. Like that's a role that
Yeah.
I take on in relationships.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
and when we're confronted with new situations or new chapters where identity is shifting, it kind of allows us to look inward, or it can feel also destabilizing. Who am I if I'm not the giver? Literally, who am I? And can kind of feel like an identity crisis of sorts. And so, it brings up a lot for me. It brings up the idea that our identity is ever evolving, and thus so is our boundaries, and
Mhm.
thus so is our inner work. That's what came up for me there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I was just thinking when you were saying that this whole idea about our identity and how boundaries can help with that.
Mm,
If we don't think about these things, like kind of make these, very sort of out of our awareness thoughts and behaviors, make them more conscious and bring them out, which is something that therapy is very helpful at doing. If we don't do that, we are doomed to just repeat the pattern. So I raise my kids, I'm feeling this ache because I'm not needed in the way that I thought I was or wanted to be or whatever. And I will just go find something else to
mm,
feel that, externally. Um,
mm.
Nothing against it necessarily, but I see a lot of women here in Manhattan with little puppies in strollers.
Oh,
And as adorable as that is, kind of makes you think, what are we replacing here? So this idea that I need to fill that, I feel that as a void in myself and my sense of self, my identity, and I need to fill it. So I'm going to just repeat the pattern, but with something else, because
mm,
my kids don't want to hear from me every day, or don't need me that way anymore. And I'm just going to go, use it, need it, find it filled with a different sort of need. And
yeah. And I'm just thinking as you're saying that, how how in many ways that is totally normal and acceptable to want to give, to be a caretaker, to help others. But the problem is when that's the only place that we're deriving significance from,
exactly. Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's where it becomes a little bit more problematic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we're not really it's externally, so it's not
Yeah.
coming from us to us in a
Mhm.
self-care sort of way.
Yeah.
See, I brought it all the way back to self-care. How'd you feel too? That was
Yeah.
good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's because like yeah, on the face of it, have all the puppies and strollers you want. You're not hurting anybody. I don't care.
Yeah.
But are you feeling that you're taking care of what you need? Are you giving yourself what you need, or are you just looking for yet something else externally to give you that sense of being,
Yeah.
um, the giver or the whatever?
Mm.
Uh, yeah, so it kind of, it can feel kind of complex and complicated, but I think at the end of the day, uh, what we're talking about here is just really taking a beat and listening to yourself, right?
Mhm.
And really just being willing to hear what it is that you're telling yourself and how you then show up for
Yeah.
yourself.
And
Yeah.
being willing to hear what you are needing and giving yourself permission to be a needy human. Like we humans have needs, right? I mean, I think that's also at the crux of what we're talking about today. It's just giving ourselves permission to be who we are, have the needs, let others know about them, which is
Yeah.
sometimes an ongoing, ever evolving process. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We're not all trained to
Yeah.
um believe that or know that, depending on what's happened to us, or our gender or culture. Just like you were saying, the messaging can be pretty strong.
Yeah.
Um and it can work for quite some time, and then all of a sudden it's not working anymore because whatever it was we were pouring our heart and soul into
Yeah.
has grown up and, flown the coop or whatever. Yeah.
Boundaries can be hard and you can do hard things, right? Both
Ah, yes.
things.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great way to end this. I cannot believe we've been talking for half an hour. It honestly feels like 30 seconds, but
Yeah.
thank you, Olivia. Anything you want to sort of wrap up with, or give us again how people can
Mhm.
find you if they want to talk to you?
Yeah, I can share how people can find me. I'm at a group practice in the city again called Let's Talk Psychological Wellness. I am accepting new referrals at this time of this recording. And you can find me on Psychology Today. Fun fact, Bonnie, is my full name is Mary Olivia Verhulst. I'm called by my middle name, Olivia. So my psych.
Oh, that's a beautiful name.
Oh, thanks.
Well, we'll definitely have all of that in the show notes also, so that people can go directly to find you. It's been such a joy. I knew from the minute I heard you speak that we would have things to talk about. I didn't realize how easy it was going to be. May have to have you on again.
No, that would be a privilege. This was really awesome, and I'm grateful. So thank you so much for the awesome conversation.
Thank you.